Okay, guys, so let's get stuck into it. So top 10 vintage fragrances. I've said to Max that we can have vintage fragrances either that where they still make the fragrance, but we like the vintage version, or ones that are totally discontinued where you can only get a vintage. So I'm going to throw it to you, Max. I think you've done them in chronological order. What's your first pick?
And the funny thing is, guys, we were back and forth on Facebook, DMing each other. The initial idea was only 3 each, and I said, no, man, we got to do at least 5 because I love this stuff so much. Yeah. I can't do just 3. Let's do at least 5. So I'm starting with this one right here, which is from 1974. I know you love this one as well. This is Givenchy Gentleman. This is the 1974. This here, I believe, is from the late 80s or early 90s. It's a vintage bottle. As you see, it's got the silver cap and the ring that is of glass. It doesn't have the plastic ring. And this is actually a splash-on bottle, but the scent itself is an unbelievable, almost animalic honey barbershop with cypress with some green in here. I believe some patchouli, heavy patchouli at the base. Reminds me a little bit of GRAVITAS, which I love, which is sitting right next to you here, which I love the scent. I can tell that perhaps this was a point of inspiration for you. If I'm not mistaken, your father used to wear this fragrance. I'm having a hard time, unscrewing this. But yeah, I love the juice because I tight this. There you go. I make them so tight. And here we go, guys. It's a splash on. It's so good. I want to drink it. And just from a standpoint of giving you guys what it reminds me of, think of Moss Brash from Tom Ford, released in 2007. It's the same green, patchouli, aromatic, fougerish, just outstanding. And then animalic honey just adds this amazing quality to the fragrance. Givenchy Gentleman from 1974 is my first pick.
Great choice, Max. Superb, legendary fragrance. And yeah, I can't argue with that one, although for some reason it didn't make my list. But yeah, absolutely superb stuff. I have an old bottle too. And yeah, really, really happy to get that one in the collection. Okay, now the only thing I didn't do is I didn't plan out chronological order. But since you've done it, I'm going to try and do the same. So my first, well, I haven't gone back quite as far as you here. My first one actually is going to be Kouros. And okay, that's not an obscure fragrance. We've all heard of Kouros, and it's still very much on our shelves today. But what was really exciting for me this year, Max, was I got lucky on eBay and I picked up the first iteration. There's all kinds of different vintages which you can tell from the box and stuff. And there's a whole website about this called Raiders of the Lost Scent, where the guy's kind of broken it down, which is kind of geeky, but I have looked into it. So I was really lucky to get a pristine condition old box, brand new. It was literally unsprayed. And of course, the fragrance kind of almost needs no introduction. It's this very masculine powerhouse fragrance from 1981. The perfumer was Pierre Bourdon, of course, who's gone on to have a stunning career. But did he ever top this? Well, arguably not. Classic, like brilliant bottle design, sort of representing Greek statues. I think a Kouros is a term for some kind of Greek statue, apparently. So it's a clever idea and a very, very potent fragrance. I think it might be classed as an aromatic fougere, but it's so much more than that. Huge note listing there, fresh citrus notes, there are florals, there's honey, there's quite a lot of animalic tones in the base, civet and musk are in there. Some people kind of say, oh, it smells a bit like, I never get this, but people say it smells...
Mothballs?
Hey?
Urinal cake,
yeah,
mothballs?
Exactly. Urinal. I was going to say urinal cakes. Who goes around smelling them? I don't know. But this is there's an undertone of something almost dirty, but in a kind of slightly sensual, even sexual way, maybe. So real rugged masculine stuff. And to have the old one here, there was some of the stuff in there that they perhaps can't use anymore. It was a little bit more rugged, very potent, and a real powerhouse gem. And yeah, for the collectability of having that vintage one, which I think
1981, right? 1981.
Yeah, 1981, and there's even a leaflet in here which I can't find.
Wow.
But that kind of stuff I really like. So that's that's my first pick. Max.
And just for a reference here, because I know you'll appreciate this, you're a big soccer fan like myself.
Yes.
That is Romario's signature scent. The striker from Brazil, Romario. That's his signature scent to this day.
Wow, the 90s player.
Correct.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's incredible. Okay, I like that.
I love that scent, by the way. It almost made my list. I just had to go with a couple different ones that were more meaningful to me. But I mean, if it was a top 10, each of us, that would have been there for sure. Absolute stunning fragrance. I'm going with my all-time favorite at this point, along with another one that's also here. This one's from 1978. I love this so much because it was my father's signature scent, just like Givenchy, I think, was your dad's. And I'm talking about Azzaro Homme. I love this stuff so much. It's fougere with a huge base of oak moss, which is my favorite note. It's so pungent. It's so loud and bold. It's, you know, you put this on, you walk into a room. And I have a little secret for you guys. I like to layer this, the vintage one, with Dior Homme vintage. And I've done this in many occasions, many events, and people inevitably always turn their heads like, who smells like this? What's the smell? And, you know, always gets attention. Perhaps, I don't know, compliments. Maybe they don't like it. It's too crazy, but I love it. But this is good stuff, guys. I mean, incredible fougere with this anise note and this oak moss. It was really groundbreaking when it came out in 1978, so much so that it's still a top seller in the world today, and it's still going. Of course, very reformulated, very, you know, a 10th maybe, or a 7th or a 6th of what it used to be. But if you manage to get one with the little sticker, you're going to be blown away if you like fougere fragrances. 1978. And I think, I'm trying to remember who the nose was for this fragrance. Guy Robert, Gerard, something like that.
That sounds familiar. I think it may well have been. Yeah, yeah.
Amazing fragrance.
Yeah, I totally agreed. Very, very good choice indeed. No one could argue with that one. Okay, so that takes up to 1978 in your list. Mine started in the 80s, so going forward just a few years actually. And this one is much less talked about than my first pick, and it's Sport de Paco Rabanne. So this was a 1986 release and kind of a flanker, I guess, to the original Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, same bottle shape and all that. And it was, of course, Rosendo Matteo, in fact, who was the perfumer for this one. He's of course, still going strong, isn't he? And this is a remarkable fragrance. If you go on Fragrantica, the listing for notes just says citruses, patchouli, woodsy notes, spicy notes and sandalwood, but there's a lot more to it. It's sort of a slightly citrusy take on a fougere, really, with a little bit of lime in the top, I think, and some similarities with the original fragrance. It's nothing like your sports fragrances that we think of from the 90s or 2000s, are much more aquatic. It's got that green ruggedness, but this extra kind of citrusy zest, maybe a little bit of mint. And it was really important for me getting into this obsession with vintage, because there were some videos by Chris from the channel Scentland, who's a real aficionado of vintage. And he used to really mention this one a lot, how great it was. And just something about his description really captured my imagination. So perhaps because of that sort of, I was really keen to find this bottle. It became like a holy grail for me. It's quite hard to find for a good price. It's not the hardest thing ever to find, but something about it just became really, it captivated my imagination. And it's a really good scent and well worth trying if you're lucky enough to find a bottle online.
Shout out to Chris from the Scentland. He's so good, and he always teases us with these amazing, hard to find, you know, exquisite vintage, old school discontinued bottles. I mean, when I look to find great things from the past, I always refer to his channel, and of course your channel. You always bring forth some really quality, classy fragrances. So I'm going to stick with 1978, and the funny thing is I almost put Paco Rabanne Pour Homme here on the list, which would have been 1973, so would have been the first one, which that along with Azzaro Pour Homme were my father's two signature scents, and this particular one that I'm sharing with you today, also on the third spot from 78, was his evening time signature scent when he wanted to perhaps get some. He would wear this fragrance here, and I'm talking about the 1978 Polo, the original. This is a vintage bottle made by Cosmere. I absolutely love this fragrance. It is so herbal, so earthy, so piney, so pungent, almost animalic. That tobacco here is like, it just grabs you like Venom's hand. I mean, I love this stuff, guys, but you have to really, it's not for the faint of heart. It's been reformulated, granted. Today it's a lot tamer. I mean, you're not going to have a problem wearing, but if you find a vintage bottle, it's not for everyone. It's a head-turning fragrance, very bold. I mean, you can't even spray on your shirt because it will stain, an older one, but amazing. I think perhaps one of the best releases from the American world of fragrances over the past, 3 decades or so. I mean, 40 plus years. Incredible. 1978, guys. Amazing.
Fantastic stuff. I'm lucky enough to have a Cosmere bottle too, and it's worth tracking one down. And yeah, and I love that iconic bottle design on that one too. It's so good. Great choice. Okay, so my last one was 1986. So we're moving forward a little bit now, and we are going to go for. We're going to go right forward to 1993 now. Insensé from Givenchy. So this was, I think, perhaps not a commercial success. Some people think maybe it was ahead of its time, but it's regarded as a really great masculine floral scent. And yeah, 1993 release. I did write down the perfumer here, Daniel Molière, and we've got aldehydes, blackcurrant, lavender, basil, bergamot, mandarin lemon, lily of the valley, magnolia, iris, and fir. I always describe it as a kind of masculine fragrance that captures the essence of spring blossom in the air. It's a
masculine floral, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's
so
like
good.
It's spring in a bottle for a man, but not in a citrusy way, but in this kind of floral way. But you know, it's still got this kind of fougere undertone to him. It's still kind of masculine at the same time. It's absolute genius stuff. A real pain to track down. Sadly discontinued. But if you do stumble across one out there, guys, snap it up if the price is right.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think the world wasn't ready for masculine floral. I remember seeing those back in the mid, like 93, 94 in stores, and they just wouldn't sell. And it's continuing the ahead of its time theme here. Just before I give you my fourth pick, M7 from Yves Saint Laurent had the same fate, because when it was released in 2002, everybody hated it because they thought it was too strong with that oud. It was definitely ahead of its time. Now it's one of the most sought after discontinued gems. But the next one here is actually a holy grail for me, Dan. It's something that I've been trying to track down for years, and I finally was able to get a bottle about 5 years ago. It cost me a lot. It was let's just say it was over $500 for this bottle. Needless to say, it's a designer, of course, and it's a classic from 1980. I absolutely love this fragrance, and I'm glad I bought it the way I did. And this is PATOU pour Homme from 1980. If you go on eBay and places, you can find this for over $700 easy nowadays. I think I paid $575 plus shipping. I love this stuff. It's just incredible. There's so much. There's bourbon vetiver here, which when you spray it on, I mean, if you love vetiver like I do, it's orgasmic. Just leave it at that. All right. It's so good. It's so good. But it's a fragrance because it's so hard to find. It's so expensive. I wear it very, very gingerly. And I think this was ahead of its time too, because I don't think it was as appreciated as it is now, but it's an incredible spicy vetiver, boozy vetiver type of a scent that's just uncanny. Nothing smells like this. Amazing.
Great. Yeah, when you kind of built it up there, I kind of knew what was coming when you said the price, because I know this is just the most expensive thing to get out there. Great fragrance. Yeah, I think it was, I forget the character's name in Miami Vice, but there's a famous scene where you see that bottle in the background. So that gives it even more so cool. iconic status. And yeah, I really want to get that. So you reckon it's worth it, right? I should hang in there and try and get one.
I wish I could go back in time and buy a few of these bottles, or perhaps clone this. You know, perhaps, who knows? This would be like a Max Forte. We'll call it Fortissimo. It'll be like my signature stuff. Who knows? You know,
what you need. You need to do that. A good name too.
I know, right?
Yeah, you've got your brand name that's done. That's a no-brainer. You got to use Fortissimo. I like that. Okay,
bring your Max out with Fortissimo. Take your game to the max.
Yeah, I mean, you've got such a perfect name for this. Yeah, live life to the max. You don't have to think hard to come up with good slogans.
Perhaps I can hire the guy from Miami Vice to do a little funny commercial with him. That'd be cool.
This is what you need to do, Max. Come on.
I know, right?
It's going to be brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Now, next one. I'm actually kind of deciding live because I've got 3 left and I've only got 2 spaces. This is really tricky. Okay, I'm gonna go with the less obvious choice. I'm gonna go with YSL Kouros Haute Concentration. Okay, so 1971 was the original YSL Kouros. So I've mucked up my chronological thing, but never mind. This one came out in 1983. I think the note listing is more or less the same. There's lemon, petitgrain, carnation, patchouli, tonka, woodsy notes. It's kind of a citrus, I think it's called a woody aromatic fragrance, but the original was a real underrated classic, I thought. Yeah, there you go. I've got that one too. Superb. That's the original Eau de Toilette. Raymond Chalion, the perfumer back then, and YSL's first release, the red top one that you have there. And they really came out with a hugely strong release, I think. Maybe their answer to Dior's Eau Sauvage or whatever, but a little bit more rugged and maybe complex than that one. And the Haute Concentration version here, which I actually got from our mutual friend Greg from the Greggy Boy 76 channel.
Great guy. Great guy.
yeah, and he loves his vintage. And
which, by the way, a little plug for him. He deserves. If you guys are looking for decants of discontinued, hard to find niche, you guys are in the UK. What's the website?
Fragrance Samples UK. I'll link them in the description too. And yeah, the UK and the EU, fantastic range and a very good guy to do business with.
Fantastic guy, 100% authentic, and Greg is as good as they come. I back that up 100%.
And it was he who pointed me in the direction of this absolute gem. So it just amps up the original fragrance a little bit more depth, a little bit more longevity. I think that this was a phenomenon back then in the 80s that they had a Haute Concentration version of some things. Monsieur de Givenchy had it too. And I think maybe it was because they didn't want to call it Eau de Parfum, because back then guys felt that was for ladies or it wasn't a manly thing. But it's effectively maybe like an Eau de Parfum, I guess. Really, really good stuff. Masculine, rugged, it's got that oak moss, all the stuff they can't use anymore, and this lovely bright aldehydic sparkling opening. Superb.
So good. My last one, Dan, I think this is going to be no surprise. I mean, if I'm doing a top classic or a top of all time favorite, this has to be there. This is another one that I'd love to have something similar to it, and of course the one and only Dolce&Gabbana Pour Homme with the sticker from Italy from 1994 until 2000. I consider this, or I class this as an aromatic fougere, but it has that tobacco, note that is just so incredible. It's just enveloping, and this fragrance has this effect on people. Every time I wear this, and I swear on my kid, I swear on my life, there is not a time that I wear this, Dan, that I walk into a place, people say, "Hey, what are you wearing? Like, what's that fragrance you're wearing?" Like, it just has that effect in people. I don't know what it is. The lavender with that spicy, there's a little bit of a vetiver here with the tobacco. I love this stuff. I mean, it's one of my all-time favorites. If I would get rid of all my fragrances, I think I have 5 bottles of this, and I would keep this. That's how much I love this.
Wow.
1994, it was the release date for that.
Yep.
And I remember, funny anecdote, the perfumer for this fragrance is Max Gavari, which, Max, a funny thing. And I remember working at a store, and I was my senior year in high school. I was working at a Dunkin' Donuts here, selling coffee and donuts and stuff. I had my little hat on and a little cap. And, on comes this guy, this very Italian-looking guy. And we're talking about mid-90s. He has his tank top. He works out. He's, little mustache going on. He comes in, orders a cup of coffee. I was like, "Man, you smell so good. Do you mind me asking what you're wearing?" "No, of course not. I'm wearing Dolce&Gabbana Pour Homme. You can only get it in Italy, though." I was like, it just made me go crazy now. I need to find this. And then I had a friend that parents would go to Italy every now and again. I was like, "You got to get me this." And here I am, like 17 years old, like, "Please, I need this in my life." So he brought 2 bottles. I wore one all the time for dates and stuff. And my stepfather ended up saying, "You got to sell me this box. You got to sell me this extra, this backup you have."
Yeah.
And I think I sold it to him for $150 at the time. I think I paid $70 for them each, and I sold it for $150 back in the mid-90s.
Yeah. That's a lot of money back then. Yeah.
That's the impact this fragrance had on people. It's just so different from anything that was around. And of course, unfortunately, it's been neutered, watered down to death. Whatever's out today is not this fragrance. So when you smell Dolce&Gabbana Pour Homme out there, it's a hint, it's a speck, a shadow of what this fragrance really is. If you can't get a bottle, and by the way, this was easy to find even on eBay for a while. I was paying like $65, $85 for this. Now, because I guess we're hyping it up, it's in the hundreds, 150 plus. So.
Yeah, you're right. So that's interesting. I always wondered when it stopped being made in Italy, but you reckon it's 2000 that they
2000 it started to be made in, I believe, Germany, and then when it went to the UK is when they really kind of changed the whole scent profile. I mean, they kept the dorsal spine, if you will, but they kind of changed it to not being so bold anymore. So it's a lot lighter and more citrus, like they amped up on the citruses.
Yeah.
This was stronger on the fougere side. Now it's more of a citrus aromatic.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's an absolutely amazing fragrance. I'm lucky enough. I think I've actually got 4 bottles. So up until it's not the hardest thing. If you hang around, you can probably come across one. Although you're right, it's perhaps changing now.
It's starting to get hard. So if someone listening to this or watching this want to get a vintage, this is it. Don't wait any longer, because I'm telling you, the next 5 years, this will be 300 plus. Easy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Fantastic classic from Dolce and Gabbana. So I'm going to cheat. That's your 5 then, right, Max? Is
That's
that
my
right?
5.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay. So I'll show you the one that I'm leaving out of my official list very briefly, and you'll probably guess what it's a good link. It's Dolce and Gabbana by Man, of course. So this is probably even more hard to find and actually more hyped up, more expensive than the Pour Homme, because this, I think, was on our shelves at much less time. Fantastic kind of powdery fougere fragrance. I think maybe kind of took some cues from Jean Paul Gaultier La Mal. Really, really good stuff. And yeah, kind of powdery and sweet, and yet has this kind of fougere-ish lavender thing.
I think, Dan, that's another one that was ahead of its time, because it had that fougere, but it was most of a sweet powdery tobacco. And I think people, with the zebra print, people thought it was more for ladies.
Yeah.
So it was very short-lived. I think it was on shelves for like a year, and it became discontinued like right away. Within a year and a half, 2 years, it was discontinued.
I think you're right. And yeah, if you look at that, I mean, that looks like a women's product of some kind, doesn't it? It doesn't look like a men's aftershave or fragrance. So I think you're absolutely right. But yeah, very happy to have that one. But anyway, that was cheating. Sorry. My actual choice in the end, and I'll tell you why, is Rochas Louis, which I was really happy to pick up. I think this was much more recent, isn't it? 2003 release. So it's not that old, but it's really hard to find now. And
is that the 4-ounce bottle?
I don't know. It's quite a big one. Yeah, it's 100 mil. Yeah, which is that's close to 100 mil. I think 120 mil is 4 ounce in your.
I have the smaller bottle. I have one of those, but I have the 50 mil. I love that stuff so much. Yeah,
it's a stunner, isn't it? And the reason I actually swapped it in for Dolce & Gabbana by a Man, because I don't know if this ever happens to you, but I picked up this jacket to put it on for the video, and you ever smell your clothes or something, and you think, what was that? That's so good, and you can't remember what it is. So I tried to sort of think back logically, when did I last, and I figured out, yes, definitely this, and it's lasted, a week on the jacket, which is always a good sign.
Wow.
And oh god, what's the note listing for this? It's got citrus, it's got neroli, it's got a lot of sort of citrusy, bright, lovely notes in it. There's a definite sweetness in it, and a kind of a really complex kind of woody element. Some people compare it, I think, to Gucci Pour Homme, the original, the 2000 and something one. I think it's the same perfumer or something, isn't it?
In the dry down of that, then I also get, I think there's some kind of sandalwood, a spicy sandalwood that's a little bit creamy also, that gives this nuance that's very peculiar to that fragrance, which is absolutely a stunner.
I think creamy is the word I'm looking for. That's a very good way of putting it. Something creamy about this fragrance. It's got freshest, woodsy notes. Really, it's not like a really, really old school smell, but it sure doesn't smell like anything much that you pick up today. Really, really fantastic stuff. So if you can find this one, Rochas Louis, just a brilliant, brilliant fragrance from 2003.
Isn't it a shame that these things get discontinued, Dan? You almost feel like contacting these brands and buying the formula and just re-releasing them,
Yeah, it is. It's a real shame. Maybe we're doing okay for time. So we'll have a quick moment on why we think this happens. Okay, so my theory is, one, it's probably some of the ingredients just can't be used. So that, I can't really imagine they're really skimping on money, because I don't think it's that big of a deal, like ingredients. So I don't think they water them down to save money.
I think it's poor sales, to be honest with you. I think it's poor sales. It's a business decision at the end of the day. I mean, because, if you release something that's a home run, chances are you're not going to discontinue. You're going to try, even if you have to replace the ingredients to make it smell the same, you will. As opposed to axing. Why would you axe something that's making you a lot of money? Look at Aqua di Giu. It's still around today. We're formulated to death, but it's still one of the top selling fragrances in the world. I think it's sales more than anything else.
You're right. I think when they discontinue, it's got to be, there's one bottom line, and that's money. And when they do when they carry on but reformulate them, I think it's more likely that they simply can't get the ingredients or can't use them anymore than anything else, isn't it?
Some brands do skimp too, Dan. I mean, we don't have to mention names, but some brands will skimp a bit to try to maximize their profits and price per mil. There's no question about that.
Okay. There we go. That's interesting stuff. Great to talk to you, Max. I really liked your picks. We'll wrap it up there, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Remember, whatever you're doing in life, let's project.